All right, and we are live. Bienvenidos, Piali. Hello, everyone. Kuali Tonali, happy day to you, or happy night to some of you. I want to just introduce myself. I'm Maritza Alvarez with Mujeres de Maiz, and we are here on Film Friday, celebrating here for the International Women's Day / month activities and programming for the 24th annual Mujeres de Maiz. I'd like to quickly introduce the rest of our team here before we get into our, GoFundMe pitch. We have Claudia Mercado, who's part of the MDM team. We also have Megan, who's in the back operating room handling the chats. And of course, we have our wonderful guests for today, building bridges through film. So if we can start out with Yolanda, if you could just say quickly, you all introduce yourselves, and then we'll move forward.
Hi, buenas noches. Muchas gracias por invitarme. I'm very happy to be here with you, sharing this space. My name is Yolanda, and I am a documentary fiction filmmaker, and I usually work in writing and producing, and currently I'm in Oaxaca, Mexico.
Thank you. Thank you. And Anna?
Hello, I'm Anna. I'm a 16-year-old self-portraiture and portraiture photographer. I take pictures of myself, my sisters, anything that just brings me joy and helps me express myself.
Thank you, Anna. Sandra?
Good evening, everyone. Really grateful to be here with you all and to be with this amazing group of fellow filmmakers, video makers, photographers. My name is Sandra de la Loza. I'm here based in Los Angeles. And my work began through photography, and it's expanded to a lot of different mediums, including film and video. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. And Janet?
Hello, everyone. I'm calling in from Washington, D.C. So good evening to you all. Thank you for having me, and thank you for just being present. And I am so happy to be in the presence of these other wonderful folks on this platform. I'm an interdisciplinary artivist. I work with photography, installation art, and performance art. And one of those things within performance is acting as well. So I'm really excited about this conversation and to get into what we all are working on. Thank you.
All right. And Skryb.
Greetings, everyone. It's a pleasure and an honor. I'm a digital multimedia artist, and I am focused on education and expanding into augmented reality, virtual reality, and 360 filming. As far as shooting, I love avant-garde as far as a part of expression. So, and my beginnings started in audio. So that I have a plethora of things. And yes, I will enjoy this conversation as we share. Thank you.
All right. Well, that's wonderful. You know, so you just heard like the breadth of type of art and works that all of these artists are bringing to the table today. All of these powerful women artists, and it's really, really important that we hear from them and that we continue to wear and question or have that critical lens. Whether you're a photographer or an actor or a multimedia artist or filmmaker. And today's theme is on building bridges and or breaking borders, right? They're two of the same. And before we continue, I do want to just give Claudia an opportunity to share a little bit about our GoFundMe campaign. And if you could just take it away, Claudia, and share with everyone out there the importance of our GoFundMe campaign.
Thank you, Maritza. Welcome, everybody. It's an honor to be here and to be amongst such amazing, talented women. And I'm here to just let you know that this year, all the programming that Mujeres de Maiz is doing is to raise awareness and funds regarding a feature documentary about Mujeres de Maiz, the work, the passion, the desire, the voices of women of color, inner city women of color, of women who are working internationally, like you will hear from today from Yolanda, or nationally and beyond borders. So, one of the things about Mujeres de Maiz is creating these spaces so that we can hear other women and their work, what they're doing. It's a space, it's intergenerational. As you can see here, we have Anna, who's 16 years old, and it's pretty awesome. I mean, I wish I was 16 and I had this type of, community to be able to be inspired by, to be mentored by, and to be exposed. So that is Mujeres de Maiz. Mujeres de Maiz is intergenerational. It's women of color, and it's artists who are educators, who are artivists, who are activists. We're mujeres that do a lot, but I think primarily we love to create and tell stories and put our voices out there. And so that is something that you don't find around the world a lot. There's very few spaces that just focus on the empowerment of women's voices. So I encourage you to go to our GoFundMe page, and if you can support us by helping us raise the funds that are necessary to take this to tell the Mujeres de Maiz story, which has been in the making for 24 years. This year, Mujeres de Maiz turned 24 years old. And we have footage. We've been documenting this collective since 1997. So there's a huge story here that needs to be told. It's an LA story, but it's also a global story. And now is the perfect time to share these stories that are inspirational, not only to ourselves, but can be inspirational for people around the globe, and inspirational for the future generations. So please visit our GoFundMe page, which I'm going to post up in just a second. And please tell your friends, if you can't afford right now for whatever reasons, we get it. It's totally get that. But please spread the word. Pass the word to those that can give a little bit. And no amount is too little and no amount is too much. So yes. Anyway, I won't take up more of your time. I will post the information in just a second. And thank you so much for being here. And let's have this kick-ass conversation. So take it away, sister.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Claudia. And before we continue, I just want to make sure that we honor where we are. We're streaming live from the unceded Tongva ancestral lands. And we thank our Tongva relatives for allowing us to be here as guests on these indigenous stolen lands. And so please, for you all out there, please let us know where you're streaming in from. And that way, we can continue to uplift the importance of making sure that our indigenous brothers and sisters and our relatives out there, have say or can, just be remembered in that way. And, so please let us know in the chat. So let us begin. Let us begin now. So we're going to begin with our first guest. And that is going to be, sorry, I just, my notes just closed. Okay, let's start with Yolanda. I'm sorry, let's start with Skryb. Sorry, Skryb. Okay, I want to just kind of introduce Skryb. You got to hear a little bit from Skryb, but just to mention, Skryb is a digital multimedia artist and founder of Afro Innovator and Afro Innovator News in 2017. And that's an online distributor of information focused on science and technology, health, business, education, creative works, and developments created by people of color. As an artist, throughout her journey, she's been a consistent follower of evolving technology in the art industry and continues to find ways to innovate expression by utilizing these cutting edge tools. It's so important to be on top of the technological innovations as a female artist as well. So, Skryb, we're going to, if you'd like to add a little bit to your bio with everyone here, and while you're doing that, I'm going to put up what you shared with us to share with the audience. Are you okay with that? Or are you able to screen what you have from your platform?
I'm not currently able to screen from my platform. I had to change locations in order to be able to focus.
Okay.
But as far as my evolution to where I am now, I have to mention my foundings. And my founding is I've been following tech since the late 80s. I was doing production on a Commodore with a Cubase and MIDI interface. And at the same time, I had my first customized PC built when it was a DOS system. So technology and art, it's only a natural progression for me that I would be here during the time of virtual reality, augmented reality, and 360 filmmaking. And being a creative writer and really a visualizer. I used to be accused when I was a kid of being a fantasizer. So to just utilize these tools, because that's really what they are, but really what I am is an interpreter of vision. And those tools are just merely my stylus or my paintbrush or my pen. So, but we're in an exciting time right now with what's available and what can be done, because right now where we are in filmmaking, you have to not so much strip away the foundations of what you've learned, but you have to expand upon, and you cannot allow yourself to be limited to what you were founded on, because you have to rethink and re-envision how you approach filmmaking when you're using these platforms, especially when you're dealing with 360 film. And reason being, all of the considerations that you have to take in place, because no longer is the camera following the action, but you have to stage the action around the camera. And no longer are, when it comes to like close-up shots, especially when you're doing immersive filmmaking and you plan on uploading that to a VR headset, those close-up shots, you have to take into consideration the emotional apprehension that a person might feel, because it's more personal. So when you're using close-ups, now when a person is immersed in VR, this person is all up in their face. So it's like, these types of considerations. And even when it comes to moving the camera, it has to be very slow and steady, because you have to account for motion sickness, because you're essentially moving the person around. So, but again, these are very exciting times, because a lot of these tools and softwares are open. They're open source tools.
And they're relatively new. They're still being explored as to what can be done with these new tools. What are the limitations? We don't know what the limitations are yet. So that's pretty cool, because there's a lot of room for experimentation. I love that part. Can you tell us a little bit about the video that we're going to see, can you tell us a little bit about that? What are we actually going to see? What is it about?
That particular video has to do with augmented reality. And
sorry about that.
It's a really short clip, as I was explaining to a friend of mine that also deals with VR when it comes to simulations. She's actually a digital land broker or a VR land broker. So, there's even that aspect of it. But this video is showing, I'm explaining and I'm, doing my beginning experimentation with augmented reality. And this pretty much, it goes into my education part of myself when it comes to sharing information. So that's what we'll be watching.
Great. Well, let's definitely take a look at that. And then we could talk more about it after we have this, this feel of what it is, more specifically of what it is that you've been working on and exploring and experimenting with. So let's see. Is that queued up, Maritza? You ready to go with that?
So once I scanned these images that I drew, shot a picture of them with my phone, I scanned them, downloaded them, and I imported them in. Mm-hmm. And then I attached these 3D models to it. Okay. This one I attached a particles effect. When I play it. Oh, that's where the clouds, the fog or something came from? Yeah. So I'll show that one again. I attached the particles effect to the sun. And see the augmented reality software. You see those particles? Yeah. So we got particle emissions. Come on. So what about the distance? Does it have to be a certain distance? Because I know it's just that because I'm using my webcam, the angle. Gotcha. Okay. So I actually need not the standard laptop cam. I need an actual webcam that I can point at it. But once I build it, this is just a test. I'm going to build it and export it as an app to the phone. So, okay.
There we go.
Personally, I think baking sourdough bread from scratch.
Stop it, Maritza. Press pause. Yeah, there we go. Should be able to do that now. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So that particular software that I was using to build that augmented reality project is also of the gaming engine that you would use to do VR. And that's Unity 3D. People are either using Unity 3D or they're using the Unreal Engine. But both platforms you would use in order to build both of these experiences. So that was kind of I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I was going to say, for somebody who's new to augmented reality, to VR, because not everybody has headsets yet, right? So what is the main difference between augmented reality and VR, virtual reality, or what is known as 360 filmmaking?
Well, 360 filmmaking is a whole different, well, I won't say it's a whole different tool of its own, but it is in a sense. Where it comes into play as far as VR is how that 360 footage can be distributed. And that is on a VR platform. The difference between augmented reality and VR is actually two different post-production practices. in actuality. So augmented reality in post-production, think of compositing. But what you're doing is compositing in real life. So you're taking elements and you're layering them over what you can see within your real life environment. VR, on the other hand, is using post-production stereoscopics. So when you go to the theater, 3D, 4D, now what they've done is taking that. That's why when anybody who has worn a VR headset or uses their cell phone, they have those two separate windows, just like how when you were at the movie theaters, you had the red and the blue lenses. But now with VR, you are completely immersed.
Right.
So there is no layering on the real world.
Right. And, what is it? So just really quick to give a specific example. So let's say you're at a bus stop, right? An example of augmented reality would be like you take your phone and you point it at the bus stop, and then on your phone, something appears.
Exactly. It can give you additional graphical information because it's using marker-based technology, meaning that the image that bus stop is using is being used as a marker. And with that marker, like I was explaining in that AR video, I scanned those images in, and with that software, I attached those 3D models to it, so that anytime the camera sees that visual marker, those 3D models will pop up. So you can put text, you can add video, you can add audio, you can superimpose like a lot of like how our environment is changing, where buildings used to stand.
So you can, it's a new way to tell kind of history in a way. Because
yes.
You can go, let's say around the corner from where you live, there's a lot of history in that corner, right?
Yes.
You can take a picture. You could take a picture of that corner, right? And then whoever has that picture that you took, which is connected, could be connected to, like, let's say a series of photographs that tells a story or a history of that corner. And all they need to do is just either take a picture of that corner or have that picture, right? Something like that.
Yeah, yes, a person could take a picture of that corner, a particular, or, not even have to worry about, because marker based is only one aspect. There's markerless, where, like for instance, they got these little funky apps on people's phones where they point at a tabletop because the phone is able to tell whether it's looking at a flat surface, and a little character will come up and it'll start dancing on the chair or whatever. And then there's also location based.
It reminds me of Pikachu, right? There was that whole, like, was it
Pokemon Go? Pokemon Go. That's location based, and that would be the part of the technology that would be used to be able to go to, like, if I'm in Leimert Park Village, and so it's changing. So Mavericks Flat, where it used to be, someone could come to that location if that building, God forbid, it goes away. But if it changes, there could be pictures, there could be historical, information that is given about that area, and somebody could just come to that location, hold up their phone, and they'll get all of this information.
That's pretty cool.
All of this
I like that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
all of that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So let's hold off on that. And then I do want to hear, we'll get to hear more about the 360
Okay.
filmmaking, which entails actually wearing a headset, which is another aspect of immersive reality, right? So
Yes.
yeah, so I think next we're gonna start with another question, and it have another artist be introduced into that question, which is let's see.
Thank you,
Maritza?
Claudia. Thank you. That was a really important introduction and segue into our next question, which is basically, what about your creations could you say contribute to the dismantling of either figurative or literal borders? And you were talking about, Skryb, you were talking about, locations and places. Will they disappear? Will they still remain? In what way do you see your work helping in terms of your creations with that technology? Would you say, how would it contribute to dismantling either figurative or literal borders? And then if you could take a moment to answer that, and we're going to allow everyone else to answer that. And then we'll segue to the next guest.
Okay, absolutely. These tools allow me to do what I do just in general, and that is to serve and assist the community and culture. I'm using these tools to archive and preserve and to tell these stories. And, it's very fundamental that, I'm the one in the community with the know-how that elders will call up, or that the community needs as far as, preservation. So to me, all of my work is for this core purpose, and that is to enable and empower others to enable and empower others, and keep the record as a scribe,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you. That is a wonderful segue to get in, hence Skryb, right? So thank you so much, Skryb. That was so important to hear, and it was just really empowering to listen to how informed you are about these technologies, and it definitely is a critical tool during these times, right? So thank you for sharing. Much appreciated. Now let's give an opportunity for someone else, any of the guests, to answer that question. Let us know if you're interested in answering. If again, I can repeat the question, which is, what about your creations would you say contribute to the dismantling of either figurative or literal borders? Let's see. Yolanda, would you like to take a shot at it?
Yeah. Well, in my work, I come from this indigenous community from Oaxaca, it's Chatino, and I had the opportunity to go to get an education in the United States. And my original idea was to make films about my community. But I think that as I develop in this world of filmmaking, I more and more want to do work in work that is for my community. And when I do for my community, it's because they are my goal is to create films for them, and it's a way for us to preserve our culture, because so much of the Mexican society, the U.S. society wants to keep us invisible, and also is that I see film as a very good tool to preserve our language and to preserve our traditional stories. And so I've used this as tools to do that. But also as an artist, I think that I'm delighted to be able to make films where I present people's stories, like my grandfather, my nephews and nieces, and people that look like me. It's something I didn't get to see when I was a young person. I just mainly saw people with in a different class or a different race. And I always saw people in my community being the sidekick or, serving the others. So that's how I see my work contributes to that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And we're going to get an opportunity to see Yolanda's work next. But if anyone else of any of the other guests would like to answer that question before we move on to Yolanda, please. Sandra?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, a lot of my work has to do with the city that I was born in and raised in and grew up in and still live in, and that is Los Angeles. And I think if you look at the trajectory of my work, you'd see a thread, and that thread is one of investigating the many layers of a city and of a place. And just finding strategies and methodologies to disrupt hegemonic ways of navigating the city and living in the city, the way that capitalist development structures our bodies and structures our lives, and finding artistic practices and tools to defy that, to disrupt that. And that manifests in lots of different ways, like me giving myself exercises. So like one year I gave myself the exercises called Top Floor, and would just go downtown, walk around, and just try to find a way to make it to the top floor of a building, places where I don't really have access to, and take a picture from that top floor. So using my camera to literally take my body to places that I do not belong. And like another kind of strategy that I have in my work is just doing deep research with respect to the city and to the land and to its histories. A lot of my work and the piece, a segment of the piece that I'm going to show uses walking as a methodology. So walking through space, and oftentimes place interstitial spaces. So maybe the spaces in between. So for example, right now I'm working on a project looking at visiting former carceral spaces, former jails in Los Angeles, and going to the spaces just outside of the jail, spaces where the land is literally reclaiming the jail space. So finding knowledge in that way, using my camera to build different relationships and discover different possibilities of embodying the knowledge that I want to embody, and also relating and living in city and living in space in this place.
Wow, that is just wonderful, Sandra. It takes a lot of like you said, research and thought to determine what is it that you're going to use this tool for. And it's just wonderful to see the different ways that the women are doing that here. And Janet, I know you'd like to take that question as well. We're going to just remind everyone, we're going to get a moment to see everyone's a little glimpse of their work. So, but we just want to give them a chance to answer this question. Janet?
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, the women who have spoken thus far have just, brought so much of the information and knowledge and strategies that I believe we touch on as artists overall. And I agree to everything and agree with everything that everyone has said. And to add on to that, I'm thinking about how I have taken my body from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles, to Paris, about to take it to other places around the world to share my work within strategies focused on creating solutions to socio-political, cultural, environmental ideologies that are adverse, and trying to figure out how to develop spaces so that others feel empowered. And for me, that is definitely a way of being able to cross those borders, being able to build the bridges, rather, because it's important for me to put your body in a space. And I think this is just like what Sandra was saying, going into different public spaces. For example, in Washington, D.C., the neighborhood called Capitol Hill is a space where I was not visiting all the time when I was growing up here. It was in the same quadrant that I live in. However, it was not within the same class and within the same caste as myself, according to the rules of class and caste that have been constructed in this society. So one of my most recent works, what I was able to do and what I actually made sure I could do through research, and that would be finding out how I can place my body within this public park that is run by the National Park Service, where I can place my body outside during this time where we're going through this isolation because of the virus, and trying to figure out how I can impact people who may not necessarily have met each other because of the areas of DC in which they live. So for me, it's definitely important to put my body into these different places and then to create programs where people can talk about building those bridges so that they actually can go back into their communities and share that information that they learned within that physical space.
Oh, very, very important. And, to some extent, just creating, whether it's a film or a multimedia piece or photography or everything combined, we're literally putting our bodies in it, right? With the thought, the energy, the concept to begin with. And then when we actually have our bodies inside the pieces, it's like you're breaking a whole other element. You're breaking another wall, and you're creating this other type of force that I feel just really strengthens the message to the public, since the artist herself is in the piece. So that's really profound and very powerful. And thank you for sharing that, Janet. If anybody else would like to share, if not, we can move on. Please let us know if you'd like to share. Okay. Okay, so we're going to move on. Thank you. We're going to move on and sharing a little bit about Yolanda's work. Now, Yolanda, you shared a little bit about the type of work, the themes that you've covered, and they've all in seeing some of your works, I know that yes, they're all about crossing over. So you either have stories that are happening in your community in Oaxaca, or you have stories that are happening of your community in Oaxaca, but in the U.S. And so I felt it was really important to have you here, because we need to see more of that, especially about indigenous communities of this continent. And so we're going to share a real quick piece, and then we can get into your story. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Oh, I apologize. So sorry.
debe estar preocupada. ¿Saben dónde andas? Tu familia debe estar preocupada. ¿Saben dónde andas?
No, yo no debo de estar aquí.
Y esta muchacha que no habla, ¿qué cosa tiene? Déjalo ir, déjalo descansar. Tú estás viva.
Hace unos días se murió el amor de mi vida. Por eso estoy aquí.
¿Crees que mi espíritu me sigue como tú?
Gris, y no voy a volver.
Aquí la van, pero anden perdidas, aquí no es, muchachas.
En este tiempo errático, me ha dado un porvenir. Yo ya no tengo un nombre. Yo ya no sé de mí. Yo ya no sé de mí.
Wow. So, it's like under 2 minutes that piece, right? And I'm already so engulfed. Like I'm totally pulled in. And I was like, híjole, I want to see it all. It really touches me. Like it pulls me in. So please tell us about that piece, Yolanda.
Yeah, well, I am trying to finish this piece. It's a collaboration that I have with this film school fellow from Los Angeles. And we decided to make a film together in Oaxaca. So using just our basic skills. So a story, a camera, just go for it. And but it's been difficult, like as with any independent production. But the idea was that we have a lot of members of our communities that were raised in the U.S. and that they have no memory of Mexico, or the memories they have are really vaguely. And so what happens when somebody comes back? What is that fear? What do they have to confront? And also there is the other reality that women face, and that is loneliness. In this case, this woman has been married to someone who has lived for 20 years. Like, I think they were together for 1 year, and then he went to the US. And so then he has this relationship with someone over the phone, or, images. And so then what happens when we move and we lose the connection? So that's what I wanted to show. But also I wanted to show it's a journey, it's a pilgrimage of people going to visit a very well-known local saint, and she's known to have done a lot of miracles for people. So people really like when they're and something to help them out, they go see her and they walk for 3 days. So then I place them on that walk. And so then the actual pilgrimage is a documentary, because we just kind of emerge with the group of people and we found stories within stories there. But the two main characters are actors. So, so I just kind of wanted to kind of show the other world. Like sometimes we just see the stories of Mexico, and it's just kind of like, narco novelas. And I was like, well, what happens with our stories, with our people, with our communities? How do we connect with each other? And that's what I wanted to show. Your microphone.
Okay, here we go. I think. Well, I just wanted to say something, because here another way of breaking borders is it's based on documentary findings, but it's a narrative film. So it's like, it's kind of merging these two formats together. And I think more and more documentaries are becoming like that. So could you talk a little bit about that merging of those two that are supposed to be, very far apart from each other, but in reality, I don't think they are.
Yeah, they're not. But also, I think that is something beautiful about documentaries, that is the search for the story, and is finding those natural characters, and that is a challenge as a documentary filmmaker. And but I wanted to tell the story of my community because my community lives really close to where the sanctuary of that Virgin is, and I just couldn't imagine telling that whole process of 3 days of hundreds and thousands of people going there, how I was going to capture that. So and also I wanted to show the beautiful landscapes too, and I wanted to show like how people lived. And so then to recreate that in a fiction format, I didn't have the budget, and it would have been very difficult to cast. But also when I see a film and I see a film that has, you know, raw, real, interesting characters and stories, I'm like, I feel the story speaks to me. So then I wanted to do that. So then using the two women, so then that's what fiction allowed me to do, control the story a little bit more, so that we had a beginning, middle, and end of the story. Because otherwise, I had nowhere to begin. So,
well, that was beautifully done, and I've always admired your work, Yolanda. And you know, I know that one of your earliest pieces was Sueños Binacionales. And I really liked how you exposed the community, the Mixteco community that did not have any exposure, you know, in the 90s. And let me just, you know, I'm backtracking here. You know, Yolanda is from Oaxaca, Mexico, and her work has been screened at various festivals worldwide. She workshopped La Raya at the 2011 Sundance Screenwriters and Directors Labs, and she holds an MFA from UCLA School of Theater, Film, and Television. And going back to Sueños Binacionales, can you talk a little bit about that piece and when you produced that and why you decided?
Well, I come from the community organizing. That's my background, and but then I've decided to change focus once I went into film school, and I wanted to make films that, you know, were going to motivate people to take action. And then so then my original idea was I did my undergrad at the Evergreen State College in Washington State. And then I was ready to go back to Mexico. And I said, well, I could really get some more training before I go back. And I decided that film was going to be my tool of expression. And I got accepted into UCLA, but my goal was really to go back home in Oaxaca and make films here. But then as I went into the world of, my life in Washington State was of an immigrant, but a student, you know, in that world. So I had school as my community. But then once I moved to Los Angeles, I found this large population of Oaxacans there, and Oaxacans who had been there for many, many years. And then I was like, well, a story just in the village is not going to be true. The scope is that now we're in both places. So I think that I need to show the reality that is not being presented, because usually we see the stories of the Mixtecos in this faraway town in Mexico, and you know, like very outside of, disconnected with the world. And I was like, the truth is that we're really connected. So that's what I wanted to show. But also the migration of my community is more recent. It had been more recent. Now it's 20 years old, but the Mixteco has been going on since the Bracero program or beyond that. And so they were more organized, and my community was just trying to find a way to kind of have a communication, you know, between families, and just establishing some, and also they were in the East Coast. So that was the new migration, new routes of migration, the East Coast, the South. And then I proposed to make a film of showing those two communities, you know, kind of what issues they had, that they share, what issues they had, conflicts, what experience one could learn from the other. So that's kind of, I came up with that film, and I'm lucky that I had access to very hardworking community organizers that allow me to follow them.
Thank you. And if it is okay, can I show an excerpt of that piece, because I know your Hope La Jornada Hope's journey was like under 2 minutes. So let's try and show a little bit of Sueños Binacionales, Binational Dreams by Yolanda Cruz. And let's get that here, one moment. Meanwhile, Claudia, if you could talk about the fundraiser in 1 minute, that'd be great. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, so as you can see here, we're getting to hear the experiences of what artists, specifically women of color, who have or value education, value activism, value their communities. And these are the types of stories that are inspiring, I feel. And these are the types of stories that I think we need in the world to help everybody as a whole dream bigger, envision a better world, not only for ourselves, but just globally. And I feel like Mujeres de Maiz, the story of Mujeres de Maiz is about that. It's about showing an alternative worldview. And that comes from the voices and the experiences and the art that is created by women, specifically inner city women of color, who have a connection to their history, a connection for some to their indigenous roots. And so, supporting a documentary on Mujeres de Maiz is supporting stories that inspire and can help us move forward into, the future. So,
all right. Thank you, Claudia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. That's really important for documentarians and for all filmmakers, is to expose the wonderful work that women have been doing with art on different levels for the past 24 years. And now let's take a look at Binational Dreams by Yolanda Cruz.
No, yo no debo de estar aquí. Y esta muchacha que no habla, ¿qué cosa tiene?
Sorry.
Déjalo descansar.
Sorry about that. Can you all see that? Okay.
Santiago, Apuala. Pues aquí, más antes, había un arbolote, pues árboles. No le quiere decir, había un árbol, pues, y ese árbol era grandote, toda de la orilla de la peña estaba así, mire, estaba así la ramita. Y, sí, y un mozo del padre de aquí de la iglesia, se cortaron ese arbolote, decía, y había una águila, pues, y dice que era de 2 cabezas.
Las primeras migraciones de mi familia, la de mis padres, fue a Veracruz, porque ahí, bueno, estaba el corte de la caña. Yo he sido inmigrante desde muy niña. Mis padres fueron jornaleros agrícolas en los estados de Sinaloa y Baja California y en Mexicali, en Sonora. Porque aquí no había forma de ganar dinero, o sea, el trabajo que hay en la comunidad es para autoconsumo. Y nadie te paga el jornal del trabajo que tú estás invirtiendo, y como no lo vas a vender, pues prácticamente nunca tienes dinero.
hermanos, mis primos acá, me escribían y bueno, me animaron a venir. No pudimos cruzar la primera vez, se nos terminó el dinero. Finalmente pasamos en el 85. El 85, 86, los 2 años fueron durísimos para mí, porque yo andaba trabajando en el campo y casi cada 8 días o cada semana me agarraba la migración, me echaban hasta Mexicali. Yo regresaba como a cuarto o quinto día, pero duraba una semana y otra vez me sacaban, ¿no? Yo trabajé en el campo con mi papá, era un trabajo muy diferente que lo que encontré aquí. El primer día de mi trabajo quería llorar, porque primero era un invierno que llegamos, fuimos a plantar cebolla, era un surco de más o menos 1 milla de largo. Entonces gané $8 durante todo el día, ¿sí? Y yo casi quería llorar porque me cobraron $5 de ride, como decimos aquí, y el resto compré una soda y un pan y se me fue todo el dinero, ¿no? Entonces así anduve una semana y pues no resultó. Y bueno, le fui a agarrar la onda y así anduve por 3 años trabajando en el campo. Finalmente cerré trabajo aquí con la Asistencia Legal Rural de California y aquí llevo 7 años ya trabajando para la comunidad y hacer lo que realmente me gusta hacer, tratar de ayudar a la gente.
Y ahí lo que plantean como actividades es la creación y fortalecimiento.
Los primeros reuniones eran dificilísimos, mucha discusión, salíamos con cada quien con sus ideas y nadie quería ceder, ¿no? Pero yo creo que cuando surgió el frente en sí, hablando de 1991, el 5 de octubre en la ciudad de Los Ángeles, cuando nos dimos cuenta que los gobiernos del mundo estaban celebrando los 500 años, creo que fue el punto clave para poder formar una organización que pudiera hacer actividades de coordinación con otras organizaciones del continente, que no es lo que dicen que Cristóbal Colón llegó a este continente para traer la civilización, entre comillas, sino más bien para destruir, ¿no? Y esa historia que no se conoce, nosotros éramos responsables para poder explicarlo en nuestra propia versión.
Thank you. So just wanted to share that piece with everyone to get a glimpse of Yolanda's, one of your earlier works, Yolanda, and I know that you talked about this, but the theme here is, breaking borders, building bridges, and I think that your work here, this documentary, exemplifies that theme. So before we move on to the next question, is there any last comments you'd like to make?
No, mainly that I think it's very important also for my work to acknowledge the work that Mujeres de Maiz is doing right now. I think it is very important for us to document the work that we do and for our community to have that, to share that, with the next generation. So I'm very excited to see the documentary of yours that is going to come out soon.
Thank you, Yolanda. And there's another question that we're going to ask the audience, the guests in general, for those who wish to answer. For example, one of them is, what about your creations differ from mainstream cultural interpretations? If anybody would like to tackle that, and then we can move into the next guest, which the next guest coming up will be Janet Dandridge. So would anybody like to, before we get to Janet, answer that question? What is it about your creations that differ from mainstream cultural interpretations?
Well, I think the mainstream, I'll answer that. The mainstream doesn't include our stories, they create the stories that we're going to participate in, but they're not our stories. So I think that's how I take on that. And just like, these are stories for ourselves where we're going to take control of the narrative.
Thank you. Anyone else? Janet?
Yeah, that's absolutely true, what Yolanda said. We're just not there. And I feel as though it's so challenging to get the work into, you were saying mainstream, right, Maritza?
Yeah.
Mainstream? Because
Mainstream
there's,
pop culture.
exactly, because it's not defined as the traditional product that someone can consume in the same way. And what I've experienced in doing my work, for example, going to incubators, thinking about one of the projects that I'm doing called Fluidity, where I'm looking to bring people together throughout the globe to understand how they can create different artivism to speak to different issues going on within their respective communities, within their respective towns, their cities, their states, their countries. And I recall one of these incubators that I went to in DC, which was at this place called Rise in Southeast DC, which is an extremely underfunded quadrant within Washington, D.C., where the vast majority of the people living in Southeast are Black. And they started to gentrify that neighborhood. And so they brought in this community center called Rise. And so they wanted to, say, hey, look, we're doing these things. We're going to bring in this incubator so we can help the community create these products to bring into the community and wherever else they want to do it in DC. So when I went to this particular incubator, I presented Fluidity, this community-based initiative to help the community create artivism. And they looked at me like I was crazy. They were like, well, how are you going to sell this? How are you going to make money? And how am I going to say that I aided you and that this has created however much, revenue? And I was just like, isn't this a community space that's called Rise? What are we doing here? And for me, that is definitely, one major challenge that's come up repeatedly within the work that I've done, within works that I've talked to others about who don't necessarily have that traditional product to sell. It's not something to sell, it's something to share and something to actually create a revenue stream, because we are artists. We do have to sustain, our livelihoods, but it's not in the same way as someone selling ice cream at an ice cream shop.
Very good point, right? It's like, that's the difference, is that, a lot of artists, your work here, the guests' work so far, from what we've been hearing, is that it's not too commodified. It isn't something that's going to, make profit for mainstream. And it tends to be the case where when you break through mainstream, it's because you're making profit for someone or being exploited. So I understand that response. It's really important that that we know that distinction between your work and mainstream work. Mainstream, it's just basically there to pump out as much money as you can from it. So is there anybody else who'd like to answer that question before we move on to Janet? Anna, Sandra, Skryb? Okay, so let's move on then. Janet, you have been with Mujeres de Maiz before. I'd love for you to share a little bit about your experience. First, let me just share that Janet is an interdisciplinary artivist who encourages awareness and discourse, as she had said earlier, around, as well as solutions to ideologies that perpetuate injustice. And she incorporates theatrical performance, photography, empirical data, identity politics, and whimsy into a keen reflection of social constructs and governing policies, primarily using performance art, interactive installations, and abstract photography. And she examines trauma and resilience, geometric therapy, which I'd like to hear a little bit more about geometric therapy there, normalize racism, otherness, and the power of Black women. So before we move on, we, as an example, she has Amendment Knell of a Nation, where she uses her body as a beacon of strength to physically remove the dehumanizing and marginalizing weight of greed embedded in the symbolism of the American flag. Spirituality, the personal empirical, and collective actions are key components that guide Janet in her creations. So let us see your piece, Janet, and then we're going to move on to a conversation with you. Let's see. And here we go. And these are snippets.
I want to read these because I have been reading all of the rest of them and to make sure all of us are creating this new social contract together. The ability to see the good but not ignore the bad. The ability to fight no matter how long or how strenuous to fix it. We cannot ignore evil, nor shall we become it. To build my own voice, force equal opportunities. Restorative justice, transformative justice.
Sorry. Thank you. That was a snippet, and we're going to get to see the other piece. But please give us some background about this piece. And I just have to say, like, it feels like when we're watching your pieces, it's like we're watching art unfold right before our very eyes in person. But please, share some background, the concept of and why you decided to do this piece and working on this piece.
Mm-hmm. Whew. Wow. Last year, I was invited to the Dakar Biennale in Dakar, Senegal, and I prepared a work that was going to discuss my role as a woman, and then thinking further, work that spoke to my position within this society in the eyes of those who have constructed labels for me. And then also to discuss who I am my power, who I actually am, not who I am told or shown to be. And so since that was postponed because we couldn't travel, I just sat on that work for a while, and I was just thinking about how I wanted to explore it more. And then the summer happened. Then we started seeing more Black folks being killed. Then we witnessed the murder of George Floyd. And when all of this was taking place, I was just taking it in and just thinking about, what am I doing as an artivist right now to speak to all of what's happening, to provide catharsis, to hopefully bring some type of suggestion that can help us within this society get out of this space. Not thinking that what I'm going to bring is the only thing that's going to happen, but it's going to be helpful. And so by the end of the summer, I decided I wanted to perform this work called Amendment, Knell of a Nation, because I wanted that nation to die. I literally wanted that nation that murdered and continues to murder and has murdered people who look like me, brown folks, anyone who is non-white. I wanted that nation, that idea specifically, to just not exist anymore. And so I was thinking about social contracts and how they were made without the people who actually are living in these social contracts. And so the piece that I started for Dakar became a piece that I needed to do in the States for my community, for my country. And therefore, I thought about when to do it. I thought about how to do it and how to involve the community in a safe way where people would feel comfortable coming outside during that time. So on August 27th, which was the RNC convention's culminating day, I said, I'm going to Capitol Hill and I'm going to do this outside. And I'm going to invite people to create a new social contract. So those cards that you saw in my hand that I was reading off, and I didn't have my glasses on, and that's why I was squinting, were suggestions from onlookers and participants on how to establish a new social contract. And so all of these beautiful suggestions that came out of people who didn't know what was going to happen that day. They just came out because they needed something to get them through. They needed something to help them understand how to create a better society for all of us. And once that was done, I was really just taken aback and overwhelmed emotionally because of the words that I saw written on those postcards. The process was to wear the American flag. The American flag is used often. And I was thinking about, well, should I do that? But I said, it makes perfect sense. In fine art, the term Black body is where I first heard that. And I was like, what? Oh, you have a term called the Black body in fine art? Oh, I had no idea that you actually have a term called the Black body. So I said, well, you know what? Once again, let me use my body. Let me carry this weight. So wearing the flag, a large flag.
Janet, I'm going to interrupt here because let's see what you're talking about here. Let's show that clip and continue with the conversation here. And that way everyone can see what you're about to describe. One moment.
So
very powerful. You know, the tearing of the fabric of this country, literally and figuratively there. But please continue.
Yeah. I mean, just watching it, I'm just thinking about that day and just thinking about how difficult and just the reality of how difficult it is. So what I wanted to do was remove that. After I dismantled the flag, I put it into the soil that you saw around me, into these metal containers. And then I had mason jars that I was going to put the soil in after I burned the flag. Now, burning the flag is not illegal, like some people believe. And it was necessary not to create some type of spectacle, but to create this shift in energy. And so I'm using ground, I'm using earth, I'm using fire to create this energetic shift so that we can move into these new social contracts that we wrote together on that day. Thereafter, taking the soil and the ashes and the social contract and putting it into the jar to seal it so that it could travel around and become this new social contract that's planted in different places. It has definitely been a journey in trying to figure out where to do that next, because in that moment that we all watched, a person walked by and yelled disgraceful. And I was thinking, don't you think the murders of people continuously is disgraceful? Don't you think the injustices within our society is disgraceful? Don't you think that you saying disgraceful without even knowing what's going on is disgraceful? And that moment and looking back at that made me understand that I have to continue doing that work. One other thing I'll say before we, move on to, going further into it, I was asked to do the work at a gallery in Los Angeles, and the curator wanted me to be there. However, the gallery's board was just like, well, we can't do this. This is just wrong. This is just wrong. And the curator was like, well, how is it wrong? Do you see the significance in what we are trying to do here, trying to help each other move out of this horrendous state? And so when we talk about research, we talk about figuring out how to put things out there and thinking about mainstream and what it looks like. What is fine art supposed to look like? What is performance art supposed to look like? What is theater? What are all of these things supposed to look like? And another question that I was asked repeatedly was, well, who funded this? I said, nobody. I did. This is why you didn't see a lot of soil on the ground, because I was working with a very tight budget, but I still needed to do the work, and I still needed to get the point across.
Thank you for that. That was actually going to lead to the next question for everyone, the general question, which was, why do you do this work, and where do you come up with the resources? Because a lot of you do not get paid for this work, but there's this passion and this drive that fuels the work. And how is it that you grapple with needing to acquire the resources to make these creations happen? Can you answer that?
Grapple with it. Well, one of the major revenue streams, it seems, for artists is applying for grants and fellowships, right? And those are two methods to how I can get funding, but I don't always get the funding. But like I said, in this particular AKN, I didn't get any funding for that. And I'm a full-time artist. Full-time, this is my job. This is my career. Every day I'm doing my administrative work, which involves, emailing, calling, writing grants, putting together works, doing research. And not until November 2020 did I receive my first large grant, which was not substantial, but it was large for me because it was my first one. And that was from an organization in Washington, D.C. called the Washington Project for the Arts, who see work done by individuals like myself. And they're like, well, let's fund this. And that money actually came from the Andy Warhol Foundation. And I was really surprised to get it. And I was like, wow, okay, and so I received funding for that. And so grappling with it, it's like I can't even think about it on the level of, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? Basically, I just have to do it. I just make it happen. This is what we do as artists. We adapt and we make it go down, regardless of how we have to do it. And let me say one more quick thing about that. Thinking about funding and thinking about having to do the work. The statue that was in the background is of Mary McLeod Bethune with 2 children. Then a statue that you did not see further into the park is of Lincoln with an enslaved man looking up to him. And it's called the Emancipation statue. And obviously last year, statues were coming down. Around those 2 statues on Capitol Hill, both of them had borders, so you could not get to it. You couldn't get to it at all because people would have definitely destroyed at least the Lincoln statue, would have taken it down. But for me, I had to do it there, regardless of the funding that I was going to get. I had to do it right there with Mary McLeod Bethune because of the work that she did as an activist, as a womanist. So it's important. It's important to do the work because the work will benefit and empower.
Absolutely. The impact is greater than we imagine or can conceive when doing or prepping the work. And it's everlasting. So thank you so much, Janet. That was really, really important to hear everything that you shared. And I'd like to now move on. If we can move on to Sandra de la Loza. I'm not sure what happened to my screen here, but okay.
While you try to, let me see, can people hear me sometimes? Okay, so while you're working on that, Maritza, I wanted just to give Skryb the opportunity. She did want to say something earlier. She wanted to make a few comments. I just wanted to give her some time right now while you're getting that set up for us. So Skryb, let's see. I'm going to add you on here, sister. Here we go.
First of all, your work makes me have to take a deep breath. And I love how you constantly say or state doing the work. Doing the work. As an artist, I feel within myself, I am channeling the divine, and this is its expression. So when you felt within you that these particular rituals needed to be practiced at these certain times in certain places, I automatically resonated with the work that you are doing, because a lot of that work takes it permeates beneath the surface and it resonates beyond what one can see. But it cuts through to the field. This is what we are doing to trigger, to be triggerers of consciousness and reconnection to that divinity. As far as the question as what keeps us going, I know for me, I have no choice. It's a churning that is within. And with each part of my journey, I'm led. And I have to submit a lot of times to where I'm being led, whether I have the foresight of where that destination is going to be at that time or not. I have to just let go and end up there, and then I will come into sync with my understanding that my higher self already knows. So, you know, I just wanted to, I mean, with all of the works that everyone that has been, you know, on this panel has been powerful, and we all have our fronts of where we do our work. And it's beautiful that we've all been brought together to know that we exist and that we're not existing in isolation, because we do feel that at times.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
all you sisters, thank you. I just wanted to say that.
All the sister stars. Yes.
Yes, all the sis stars. Yes.
And I want to just reiterate that I think you touched on a very important part of the process of creation, right? Which is that which we are compelled with the vision oftentimes, or we're compelled with our heart, or that part of us that wants to make a difference, whether it's going up to the highest building in downtown LA and, you know, taking these views that, you know, how often do most people get to do that? Not that often, right? To, like, you know, doing this act, this public act to remedy, you know, this social illness that needs an intervention, to, like, in, you know, and, you know, using your own personal resources. There's a part in the creation process that we navigate and try to control as best as possible to manifest our visions. But then at the same time, you know, sometimes the art piece has a mind of its own. And so
yes.
How do you all negotiate that? How do you all make amends with that? Because sometimes we want to follow through with our vision, but the stuff ain't happening, right? So it's like you gotta, and I think that's where the artist comes in. You gotta find ways to make stuff happen. And sometimes it's like you just do with what you got. But the desire, where does desire fall into all of this in your work? If you guys don't mind touching a little bit on that. And if anybody else wants to share, that's, you know, I'll go ahead and add you guys, the rest of you folks, mujeres, in case anybody
Skryb,
else.
I feel like Skryb, you know, you really defined that when you said that it's divine and it comes through you, and you know, it's like if it's happening, it's going to happen. You can't change it. Just let it flow. It's all about allowing that to flow, because that's what's supposed to be happening, as opposed to the idea you had in your head. And then when you put it out there and it starts to have it has a mind of its own. So I definitely agree with Skryb. Just allowing that energy to flow through me. Yes, I have ideas, and yes, I'm going to put them out there. However, the shifts is what makes it even more extraordinary, or not even extraordinary. I don't really like that word. Even more significant and amazing.
Yeah, I absolutely. For me, as she was saying, the desire, or to, you know, allow the peace to be. I have to forgo ego and understand that I am a channel. At least that's how I feel about myself and how I view myself. I view myself as a channel that is in service, and it's in the service of the purpose of, you know, uplifting community and spreading light. And the only time a piece is stagnated is when I get in the way and block what I'm supposed to be actually channeling by allowing my ego to believe that I'm doing this. I've looked at aspects or pieces of my work that I've edited, and I look back, I'm like, wow, did I do that? or there's been times that I've written this, woke up in the middle of the night and I have an idea for something and it comes out and it looks like scribble scrabble. I'm just writing and I can't stop. I have to harness this writing now and make sense after it has to be done. So, just understanding and feeling honored to be chosen to be a channel of expression. Because if not, what I've experienced is the heartache of being doubtful and having my ego get in the way of something that I'm supposed to be simply a channel for, and see it be birthed through somebody else. Because sometimes a piece of work is supposed to be born in service for that's beyond me, let's, get out of my own, and even though I might have been that first choice, what's needed to communicate it is bigger than me. So if it can't come through me, then it will flow through someone else, because we're all, connected to that divine, that energy. That's how I feel, and that's how I view myself as an artist, and that's how I, move.
Thank you all. I mean, everything that you're sharing is just really important and for everyone to hear. For the sake of time, we're going to continue this conversation, but first we still have two more guests to highlight here. So let's continue with Sandra de la Loza up next. And Sandra, one moment here, my screen is kind of flipping out. Sandra de la Loza is a LA-based artist who creates open-ended research-based frameworks to guide inquiries that include visual, experimental, social, and pedagogical components. Working as a performance archivist, she moves critically from and in between the institutional and the social, occupying a variety of sites to interrogate underlying power dynamics and knowledge production through history and memory. Her work has been exhibited in major museums, alternative art spaces, and community centers within the US, Latin America, and Europe. And she has co-created autonomous spaces for artistic production, community action, and critical dialogue that center the voices and history of people of color, including Arts in Action, 2000-2004, Decolonize LA, 2016-17, and At Land's Edge, 2016 and 18. So welcome, Sandra de la Loza. Oh, you're on mute.
Here you go. Yeah, thank you, Maritza, for the introduction.
Yeah, so please tell us a little bit about some of your pieces, Sandra. To begin with, one of your current pieces, and I'd like to, of course, we're going to get to see some of your work because you have so much work. So if you can share, I guess because you have so much work, if you can share, like, in terms of concept, what is different about your work? What do you feel is different, and what do you think is urgent about your work?
I mean, I don't know what's different, and I definitely don't make work to try to be different, but I make work to grapple with questions that I don't have answers to, and to grapple with the difficult questions that I think that we are facing. So, for example, I think one of the pieces that you're going to show, Incantation for Los Angeles, like that comes out of a larger project called To Oblivion. And that came about when, like, in the mid-2000s, I just became aware this thing that we now call gentrification was disrupting historic demographic patterns in Los Angeles, and especially displacing the displaced, working class, communities of color of various diasporas. And I wanted to understand that a bit better. I also understood that like gentrification, a new city was being designed, is still being designed. In my research, it just kind of became clear that just in histories of displacement, transportation often has a role. Like if we take this kind of urban capitalist system back to we look back to like settler colonialism, the processes that produce those disruption, like one of the first infrastructural things built in the infrastructure is transportation. And just preceding gentrification in LA, a new transportation system was built. And I kind of wanted to understand that a bit. And, you know, just looking at the 20th century of Los Angeles, like the building of transportation infrastructure has had such a huge influence and impact on the social and cultural and class lines that are built in, have been built in the city and continue to be built in the city.
Yeah, and a lot of your work, you know, is locally based urban reflections of what's going on with working class communities and transformation. So let's delve a little bit more into that discussion. But first, let's show your piece here so that everybody get an idea of the work, the array of work that you create. And this is Incantation for Los Angeles by Sandra de la Loza.
Can I share a little bit about the piece before you show it?
Sure.
Yeah, so this work was done as part of an artist in residency at the Echo Park Film Center. And being an artist in residence at the Echo Park Film Center meant I had access to their cameras. I come from a photo background, but I really never had the opportunity to work with film. So I learned how to use Super 8 film. I worked with 16mm film. And I was doing deep research on the history of transportation in Los Angeles, and I learned that one of the most influential urban planners was Henry E. Huntington, who was one of the main owners of the Pacific Electric Railway, a private transportation system that had a huge impact on the race and class lines in Los Angeles. Like he bought large tracts of land and then built roads there, and then divided and allotted it, and he had a land holding company, and they'd sell that land. And he really created communities so that only people of certain races and classes could live in those communities. So I was aware that like the patterns of left by the Pacific Electric Railway were still alive and exist today, and also like shaped my father's life. My father was born in LA in the early 1920s. He grew up in a segregated LA, where as a Mexican American, he couldn't live in certain places in the city. He couldn't swim in public pools only on Mexican Day. He grew up in a city where there were signs like no Mexicans allowed. So in discovering this, I decided to walk to follow one of the lines of the Pacific Electric Railway. Starts called the Sierra Vista line. It starts in downtown LA and it ends on the border of what's now El Sereno and Alhambra. So it's an 8-mile walk, and what you're going to see, it's all it was all shot in camera, so I did not edit post-production. All the edits happen within the camera. And so it's this kind of ritual of walking, following one of these historic lines and looking at and just taking in, witnessing, documenting the urban city that has grown from this early infrastructural infrastructure of the Sierra Vista line.
Thank you, Sandra. And here we go. This is Incantation for Los Angeles by Sandra de la Loza. Encapsulates LA. If you're from LA, like that's definitely an incantation for LA. So thank you for sharing that, Sandra. And if you could share a little bit about your the technical production of this piece. I know you shared how it was in camera edited, but how did you get that look, in the film processing and so forth? And why did you decide to do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the film is cross-processed, so I didn't add color during the editing process. That's actually the color of the film. And what cross-processing means is like you take, say, positive color film, and then you develop as negative film, and you get this negative that has this color palette. And also with a Super 8 camera, you can play with frame rate. And so standard film is shot about like 24 frames a second, is like 1 second of film. But you could slow down that frame rate or increase that frame rate. So you could create slow motion within the camera or fast motion with in the camera as well. And the piece is called Incantation for Los Angeles, and it's definitely it was a ritual piece for me. It was like a personal ritual, embedded with deep research on the history of the city and how infrastructure, how race and class and all the isms were intentionally built into the city. And then following that, he literally creating a ritual practice to follow one thread of that history and take in the history. And so I wanted a aesthetic look that that was familiar, but also that disrupts everyday LA. I wanted the viewer to recognize what they were seeing, but also to be able to see the city in a different way. And also walking is just such a powerful practice for me, and such a, like, for lack of a better word, magical practice for me. And love this city. The city breaks my heart, but I have just deep love for this city. And there's just always just beautiful moments and beautiful details. And so so in the walk, I'm also kind of finding those details. I'm taking in the layers of history, whether it be through signage, through architectural details, through people who I cross along the way, through plant life. Later on in the film, as I literally cross the bridge, and you know, LA is a city of bridges and hard lines and hard boundaries, and the line from Boyle Heights to downtown LA has been a historically distinct line on you know, working class, for like working class Mexican Americans. Also, Boyle Heights was largely Jewish, and and downtown LA. And then in crossing that, like I do like stumble upon datura, native plants, plants that have kind of psychedelic or mind-altering perceptions. And I think that's also kind of what I'm trying to do with film itself, is produce mind-altering visualizations.
Yes, well, you absolutely have captured that and have been really effective in doing that. You know, it's not the standard storytelling format. So it really provokes thought. We're used to, you know, standard narratives in film, in this medium, but I really respect and I enjoy how you play with the different formats. The thought of cross-processing the film, you know, it would have never occurred to me. So that obviously takes a lot of thought, and, you know, along with your research. And so it's really, just to be mindful of time, I know we have one more guest, but before we move on to that one guest, I'd like to ask one more question for everyone to have an opportunity to answer. But if you can answer this one, Sandra, here we go. Where do you see the film, photography, and multimedia storytelling heading? You know, we got a glimpse right now of the different ways that these tools are being used. And I know you said earlier, like, you don't create to be different. So this is almost like two questions in one. Why do you create, and where do you see film, photography, and multimedia storytelling heading at this time or in the future?
Well, I mean, it's great to be on a panel with someone like Skryb, and you know, just hearing them talk, I learned so much. And yeah, and so there's new tools to play with, and for me as a image maker, constantly learning and experimenting with new tools is important to my process, you know. But ultimately, I'm also not totally seduced by technology. I think our greatest weapon and our greatest tool is creating language and telling the stories that we don't have language for. So it's an internal process. It's an interior process. And yeah, sitting with what we don't have language for, sitting with what is difficult, sitting with what is pressing, and then finding tools to investigate. And those tools are both inner for me and then also outward. And so that's always kind of my starting point. And yeah, I just encourage, great to be on here, everyone on this panel's like approach to the work, and just encourage everyone also who is listening to let's experiment with how we tell stories, but also let's ask the difficult questions and give voice to the things that aren't voiced. And that I really kind of learned that with probably one of my most influential maestras, which was Shri Moraga, when I was taking writing classes with her as an undergrad at UC Berkeley.
Thank you. Thank you. That's really important to be reminded, right? To ask those critical questions and use that art as a form of expression for a language that or for a story that we don't have the language for. So,
and then one of my other maestras, she talks about like our work is to carve the pathless path, so we're carving the path that we don't have, that's not there, and art can give us tools to carve that pathless path.
Absolutely. And or creating those bridges, right? So that absolutely, thank you for that really important response and reminder for all of us. Is there anybody else in there that would like to answer that before we move on to our final guest, photographer? Is there anyone else that'd like to answer that?
Skryb said they wanted to answer.
Okay. For some reason, I cannot.
Or was that a past chat comment?
Okay. Thank you, Skryb.
First of all, I love the piece. When I first introduced I Love Avant, I was like the last class of Super 8. And, that splicing and all of that. So, yeah, we can't get caught up in all of the tools, because at the same time it's not tech for tech's sake. You have to have a purpose, and it's just a tool, not the tool, running you. And that's all I want to say, because, respect to our other guests.
Oh, well, thank you. That's so important. Yeah. It's about what you do with the tools, right? Because there's always going to be these new tools coming our way, especially with the way technology works. Every 6 months, you got to do these upgrades. It's like, so it's really important is what you do with the tool. And speaking of, we're going to go back to the basics of photography. Still photography. I think most of us here started with still photography, including myself. And so we appreciate that celluloid, whether it's Super 8, 35, 16. And now we have digital. And our next guest here, who is just wonderful to hear. And she's 16 years old. And she's, in fact, one of the mentees for Mujeres de Maiz, has been pretty much raised with Mujeres de Maiz. And her name is Ana Vasquez. Welcome, Ana. Thank you for your patience. You have a V at the end of your name. You should have gone first. So I hated that in elementary when, but I want to welcome you. And just going back to the fact that, you're 16-year-old photographer based in LA, you're raised in Baldwin Park, and you're a junior currently at Sierra Vista High School. You focus on portraiture and self-portraiture photography, and your work is inspired by your personal style as a way of expressing yourself. You started your photography pursuit 4 years ago by taking pictures of nature and your sister. It always starts in the family. That's important. And you've been featured in a few publications such as Bright Light Magazine, Migrant Mama, Wheat Pasting and Mural, along with the Migrant Mama virtual reality experience and more. And in the near future, you plan to go to college for photography and art history, and one day would like to publish a book about your work showing how far you've come. So welcome. I mean, I hope that so far this panel has really continued to inspire your work and allowed you to really learn more and see the breadth of photography and where it can take you in the different forms of expressing yourself through that. But before that, I'd like for you to share a little bit about, one, why did you delve into photography? How did you get introduced to it? And why do you continue to do it? And why do you choose to continue to pursue photography?
Yeah, so I started photography 4 years ago. I was about 12. A bunch of people in my family have done photography, and I practically was raised with photographers around me, and I wanted to get into what they were doing because I thought it was really cool, and I was always like looked up to them. So around 4 years ago, I joined an organization called Las Fotos Project, and I started my pursuit there. And I'm still like in the organization, and I'm still like highly involved. But I use that as kind of like an outlet for me to start expressing myself, since I was just becoming a teenager and I wanted to know like more about myself, and I use this as like an outlet to find out more about myself and to know more about like my feelings and others' feelings, especially right now in like this current like world setting, and like with all social media and like the media currently, like we're like getting fed the media pretty much with my age group, since that's kind of what we all grew up around.
Okay, well, that's really interesting. Yeah, that is your world, right? And, you know, Mujeres de Maiz has always exhibited intergenerational artwork by different women. And so it's really an honor to have you here, knowing that you started at 12 years old, you're 16 now, and you said you started with Las Fotos Project. Can you tell us a little bit about Las Fotos Project and how it is that you got into Las Fotos Project?
Yeah, so Las Fotos Project is a nonprofit organization that caters towards teenage girls, and especially girls that are within like POC, and like girls who never had that like source of expressing themselves and a way to do that. And with photography, a bunch of girls are able to do that, and it's really great because there's a bunch of the girls in there that I've met, and like we've created family. It's been created as a family, and we all got to grow up together, and it's been pretty nice.
Okay, so let's show a little bit of your work. I know that you don't have right now available a trailer per se, so we're gonna log into your website to see some of your portraiture. Okay, why don't we all do that now? Okay, can everyone see this? So if you could just share while we're looking at this, Anna, if you could share.
I guess you can't hear me. I guess I'm talking to myself. So would we be able to see some of those self-portraits again? Would you mind telling us a little bit about how you came up with your images for your self-portraits? Or is there a piece of one of your photographs that you would like to talk about specifically that you're really proud of?
We can do, I think, on the like, I don't know how to explain it. Like the ones in the second row, I think it was like, I don't know how to explain. Sorry. But when I take my pictures, I kind of want to face how I'm feeling that day or how I felt that week. I base it off the way I feel and how I want to express myself through the pictures. So that's kind of how I get like this idea. I also do it a lot on nostalgia, especially this last year, since I kind of missed the way that life was, since that's kind of all I knew. And I wanted to base it around growing up and not wanting to grow up. So that's kind of how I try to like take these pictures, and I try to focus a lot on lighting and creative lighting as well, since colors have always been something that I always loved, and bright colors. So, yeah.
So it's pretty awesome that you have a tool where you can express your emotions and your feelings, and share that with others. Get it out and share it. I would think. I mean, what do you, when you finish and you see the product and you see that self-portrait, what do you feel? What does that do for you?
I feel relieved. I feel a lot more. I feel a lot more like relieved and stress-free, I guess, since that's kind of like my only outlet. Like people have journaling, people journal, people paint, like all that stuff. And for me, it's photography. And that's my outlet, and that's how I want to express myself. So I really feel relieved, and I feel like I'm ready for a new chapter.
A new chapter that incorporates photography, or are you curious about other tools? I'm gonna get my dog out of my office.
Yeah, so I really want to get into filming. I think that's really cool and really inspiring. I've tried filming a couple times, and I felt like maybe I can't do this, but I've always like tried to incorporate my ideas within photography with filming as well. I really want to get into filming and writing as well. Like, I really want to write a book. That's my main goal.
Okay.
Can I ask you, have any of the panelists influenced you or inspired you in any way to pursue those dreams that you have that you just shared?
I think all of them have. All of their work was really amazing. I was like so inspired. I was like, oh my god, like I was shocked. I was like, oh my god, like I've never felt so like, what, I don't know what the word is, like just so like, I guess relieved to see how other people are also using like photography or videography as like an outlet and a way that they can express themselves. I think it was really cool.
I'm glad to hear that. And can I ask all the panelists, are any of you in any way, do you have any words of encouragement for or inspiration for Anna?
I'm gonna add everybody on, and then you guys can see.
Yeah, like
what, because it's like, you know.
Well, I want to quickly say, Anna, I see your love of lighting. That's the first thing that I noticed. I was just like, wow, I love these moods that she's creating with these lights. It touches you, like what you were saying about how you feel and expressing yourself and relief. That's exactly what comes through. And one of the things that I learned as a young girl from my mom was to not ever say that I cannot, to always give a shot to what you're looking to do. So if you're looking to film, just like you see all of us on here, and Yolanda, Sandra, Skryb, I'm not sure. I don't know if you, you know, with the technology as well. I mean, you have people who can help you if you have a question, you know, if you need guidance. But I just want to say that yes, you can.
Thank you.
First of all, the first thing I noticed is you have great composition as far as your eye. And that's so very important, especially when you want to capture the mood of, or, you know, of a moment, or is that composition and what you have within that frame can tell so much. As when they say a picture takes, you know, say 1,000 words. Yes. And understand too that art is free expressionary. Don't be afraid to experiment. You know, just let go and see what you come up with, and, you know, go with what you're drawn to. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say congratulations, Anna. You've accomplished so much. And you have such strong tools and such strong foundations. And I see and hear your voice through these images. So really impressive. And couple things I'd love to share with you is just keep growing and keep playing, keep experimenting, and never lose touch with the fun of making art. And always trust yourself. Always listen to yourself and always trust yourself. Thank you.
I'm sorry. So thank you for all that input from everyone. There's one question that I'd like to address to you all, and it was kind of brought up earlier as we close here, which is, we all understand, right, as photographers, as cinema makers, as image makers, the critical decision that a photographer, director, filmmaker, or multimedia artist makes in deciding what to keep in the frame. But even more important is what you decide to leave out of the frame, or out of the canvas, or out of the story. So please share any thoughts that you may have about that. Anyone?
Well, since I'm right now, that's one of the things I have to reckon with, especially with 360 footage, because everything is in the shot. So, and, you know, the emotional responsibility of people coming into that immersive experience, you know, it's hard, you know, I'm answering without answering because that's it's a work in progress. I'm trying to figure it out. Everything's around. Part of the journey.
I'll share one thing I'm working on. So I mentioned a little bit, I'm shooting former jails. So right now I'm kind of just trying to frame things to give a sense of the space around the jail. So yeah, I'm widening my frame a bit, but still I need to kind of cut so it's not too noisy and the jail doesn't get lost. But I want to see that space kind of floating floating in an environment as well. So it's always about, so that's kind of the balance I'm trying to find in my images right now.
I want to just ask Yolanda something, as somebody who's working on a documentary. Like, oftentimes we have to decide what we're going to include, right? How do you like, and it's the same question. It's like, how much, like, how do you negotiate what you're going to include and not include? Because, you're telling, a story that's based on real people, real life events, and everything is important. But how do you, what parameters do you give yourself?
Well, I always think filmmaking is a very, I'm a technician, I call it. I'm an artist that is a technician. I have to be, because in order to kind of turn a film that is going to be programmed or that is going to be broadcast. So I have certain parameters that is asked of me. But, when the story begins, I think that's what's very important. And that's something that maybe Anna, you can, take from right now, is that when we begin a story, is we're channeling this energy, and it's this story that wants to come through us, and that's how we have to be open. So I see the beginning process as allowing everything to come in and film everything and not putting any restrictions on that. And then the hard work is when you have to decide, characters that are not going to cut it, or characters that are, and then you're like, you have to be really technical, and you have to be, but then also there's another form of channeling, because really then the story is telling you, is guiding you. It's not longer you, you're like, no, I really like this person, I want this to work. If it is not working, it's not working. So I had kind of situations where I had images that were really shaky or really dark, and I'm like, no, I shot it myself. So I was like, I cannot show that, nobody can see that. But that's an image that needs to be there because it's telling a part of the story. So if it is dark, if it is shaky, well, that's how I shot it. And it's no longer my ego. It's no longer, that what I need to hide. It's more like what's the story needs to have, and what is. So then that's how I approach editing. But it is a really long process, and it's like that's why editing takes so long, I think, because it's not just an emotional or mental, and then you just have to be, very technical. It's like cut, that's it, or add it.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for editors, right? There to help us to cut it, because sometimes we're like, I want to hold on to it, right? So props to the editors. Anyhow.
Well, good luck with the documentary. So I think also it's important to, I think that we forget sometimes, but I think it's very important to have the feedback from our community. So I think it's very important that you allow yourself to show some of the work and to share some of the work, and to be able to listen to different perspectives, and, to take in what's good, what's not good, let it go.
Well, thank you so much. And in consideration of everybody's time, unless somebody else would like to answer that question, we can continue. Otherwise, we're going to have to close. I know because, our sister Janet is out in DC, so it's probably past midnight. And I know, Yolanda, you're out in Oaxaca, so I'm sure it's almost midnight there también. And but we can't thank you enough. This type of dialogue and exposition of work by women of color who are critical thinkers and are really pushing the envelope when it comes to storytelling and the way of storytelling is just unique. We really have to do this more often, especially now since we have this type of platform talking about technology, right? This tool that we're utilizing in our favor, right? To inform and expose the works of these amazing women to the larger communities. So we have to do this again. These type of talks are important. So thank you on behalf of Mujeres de Maiz, each and every one of you, for participating. And again, we're about trying to raise funds for this documentary as well this year, so that come the 25th anniversary of Mujeres de Maiz next year, we can share that with the world. We can share that with you all to see this compilation of all of these activities and artwork from urban, life and experience of women of color. You're going to get to see those different expressions in this doc. So reach out to those people who you think can help contribute, share the word, put them out there, and make sure that they help us out. You all know what it's like to try and raise funds for your pieces, right? And we're trying to do that here for the first time. A lot of the work has been done in a voluntary level for the past 24 years, but this is the first time that we're requesting support to help complete this documentary.
How many hours of film do you have?
I have over 20 years worth of footage. So we have that. So basically, Mujeres de Maiz, every year they have a live art show. So I have all the live art shows documented, plus all their a plethora of events that they've organized, from like, workshops to conferences to mujer mercados to poetry nights to public performances to protests, you name it. It's there. It's a lot. And obviously not all of it is going to get in there, but it's we're in that journey. We're in that journey.
Have you started cataloging, editing, or what stage are you in right now?
So I've done my own little archiving. It's not professional yet because it needs to be cataloged, but I've done it my way just to help me start putting I have like 2 rough cuts, but I've been doing everything myself, and I need an editor and I need a producer.
Wow.
It's been a labor of love, passion project. So I am in need of a producer and an editor to
sounds like
get us to the
always
next level.
No, it's like it's years. Like, it's not just one documentary. Sounds like it's going to be multiple documentaries. Like I would see this on PBS, and I'd watch it every time it comes on.
Yes.
So the first one.
Series, but conceptually it could be a series, so that'll help break it down.
Yes.
And so it's wonderful. This is also live brainstorming thing.
That's right. So then maybe you should call us for another meeting like this.
Thank you. I'll take it.
Right?
Sure.
Amazing artist. So again, we thank you so much, everyone. It's been so beautiful to have you all here.
Yes.
And good luck. You all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a beautiful week, all, and let's keep in touch, okay?
Well, yes.
All
We'll
right.
definitely have a follow-up somehow, some way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have a good
Buenas
night.
noches.
Good night.
Buenas
And
noches.
good luck with the work. Keep pushing forward. Thank you for the inspiration. I can't wait.
Bye. Love you all.
Peace.
Okay. Hey, Megan and I are still here. Thank you, Megan.